Hey there everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of my bargain pickups that I found in the nearly 5 years that I have been living here in Japan. These pickups are all to do with my somewhat curated collection of retro gaming stuff that I have picked up over the years, and the feedback on the first episode about the rare version of Tetris that I found for an extremely good price in Surugaya got some wonderful feedback, so thank you for that, and I hope you enjoy this one. So what am I talking about in this episode? Well, I'm talking about an accessory for the original PlayStation, the Fighting Stick PS from Hori. It is an awesome arcade style joystick which really benefits some games. So I'm going to talk about how I found it in this episode, what I paid for it, why I was looking for it, and talk about some of the games that definitely benefit from this style of controller. And then last, I want to talk about some of the contemporary and some of the historical coverage that this awesome controller received. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So gamers of a certain age will know what this controller is. This is the very first PlayStation controller that was launched with the system back in 1994. In fact, it really is the first controller that was launched with the system, because this is a slightly rarer SCPH1010. It's slightly smaller than the non-DualShock controller that we got in the West, which subsequently also replaced this controller in Japan. But otherwise, it's virtually identical. And of course, a controller that needs no introduction as well is the awesome DualShock controller, which quickly became the standard for PlayStation gamers in the very late 90s. This controller is just a delight to play with, and as you can see, this particular example is looking a bit worse for the wear, but it still functions perfectly. Now, one of the things that people at the time said in the press about the PlayStation controller when they first saw it in pictures and so forth is like, how well is that D-pad going to hold up for certain types of games? Because unlike most controllers at the time, this piece was segmented, so they were worried about like diagonals and this kind of stuff. As we all found out, it still works really great. Certainly there are some games that play better on the Sega Saturn pad, which has a more orthodox D-pad, but otherwise I think most people really came to love this controller. I mean, after all, the PlayStation controller, even to this day, follows pretty much the same format, so they must have done something right. So what games can benefit from an arcade-style joystick controller? Well, I think there are 3 types of games that I play that really benefit from it. The first one is your old school arcade titles. Now, Ms. Pac-Man Maze Madness is not an old school game itself, but on the disc is Ms. Pac-Man, the original arcade game. So I think that really benefits from an arcade style controller. Certainly I enjoy playing them more that way. Shoot 'em ups is another category that really benefits, I think, from a joystick style controller. Whether it's your 2D style Gradius Gaiden style of shoot 'em up, whether it's your more 3D based shooter like Raystorm here, these really do feel great playing on an arcade style controller. And of course, the other genre that really benefits is your one-on-one fighters such as Soul Edge here, or Soul Blade as you may know it from Namco, and it's really rather good that's overlooked, and it's actually on the TV at the moment. This is Inuyasha Sengoku o Togigasen. This is a very late release for the PlayStation, but these games really benefit from a joystick controller because of the accuracy of pulling off special moves. So not that long ago, I picked up this PlayStation in box, and I repaired it by using a donor board from another system that I picked up. There's a video in, I think, this corner, which you can watch. I found out about the controller through this particular book. This is a PlayStation Perfect Catalogue. This is the second volume, and I thought, wow, that looks good. So it so happened that when I was in the branch of Hardoff in Nara, where I found the donor board for this PlayStation because it wasn't functioning properly, I found the Sega Saturn version of this. So I had a chance just to sort of get a feel for the controls. Now obviously it wasn't plugged in, so I couldn't actually test it on a console, but I thought, wow, this feels extremely solid. And it really is, because most of this is just constructed of metal, and it's also made in Japan. Most controllers after this were no longer made in Japan. Now, I'm not trying to say that the build quality outside of Japan is bad, or that the build quality in Japan is always great, because that's not the case. But there is a certain sturdiness to a lot of made in Japan products that sometimes can be lacking these days. So this is a wonderful all metal construction. I think the top plate is also metal. I don't think it's plastic, but certainly it is damn solid, and it doesn't actually weigh too much, but it's got a real heft to it. So I got a feel for the buttons, and I thought, gosh, this feels really, really good. You know, like compared to a lot of these arcade controllers that you can get, like the Sega branded Sega Saturn controllers or arcade style controllers, which really aren't that great. This one feels so solid. And then you've got the joystick itself. My God, it's amazing. There is so much accuracy in this controller. Now, this was a really beat up one that I was fiddling about with in this branch of Hardoff. So I thought, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to look online to see if I can find one, because I haven't seen one in the flesh here in Japan. So where did I find this one? Well, most of you will have heard of Yahoo auctions, but I didn't find this on Yahoo auctions. I actually found this on a website called Mercari, or Mercari if I'm to pronounce it in a slightly Japanese way. And it's like a classifieds website, a bit like Gumtree or Craigslist. It's not auction based. So you go on there and you'll find all of the goods that people have got listed. They're mostly all private sellers, and you can literally buy it now. So very straightforward, fantastic website that I've found some amazing bargains on. And there was a fair few of these on there which were available to purchase, a little bit above the price that I was hoping to pay, maybe around about the 4,000 yen mark. But I found this particular example not listed as you might expect it to be. I can't remember what it was listed under, but it was something like PlayStation Arcade Controller. It was lacking some of the keywords that people would generally type in to find this particular controller. And I found it boxed in wonderful condition for, I think it was 1,580 yen. I will put in a subtitle what that translates into in US dollars and British pounds as of the time of recording, but that was an amazing price for this controller because it is in fantastic condition. So here it is. It's got a little bit of dust on it and probably a couple of little sort of scratchy marks that I've probably added to it, if the truth's known, but otherwise it is in an amazing condition. The buttons still feel extremely solid, the joystick is perfectly accurate and so forth. Everything feels amazing, and even the back of it, which often on a lot of these arcade controllers that have metal base plates, these will actually look quite rusted out, but this one is in really good condition. It's beginning to go here by the looks of it, but overall this is probably about as good as you can expect it. And yeah, it's just in amazing condition. So for the price that I paid, it was a really good bargain. So let's take a look at what the PlayStation Perfect Catalogue has to say about this particular controller, the Fighting Stick PS, and also its competitors in the market. So in the marketplace, maybe not exactly at the same time, but around about the same time, was the Konami Hyper Stick, which retailed for 4,800 yen, that's probably excluding sales tax. And then there was Namco that had the Namco joystick, which was a slightly unusual configuration because it was really designed for playing games like Soul Edge and Tekken, because it actually only has 6 face buttons, so that pretty much ruled it out as my particular controller of choice. Great for Tekken, but if you want to play other games, it's a little bit awkward because I think the L2 and R2 triggers are 2 smaller buttons to the top right of the controller. That retailed for 5,800 yen. Also, you had the ASCII Fighting Stick 5, which I think might just be called the ASCII stick outside of Japan. That was released for 5,980 yen and is very much contemporary with this one. That was the SLPH 00003, so also launched at the same time. And then coming on to the Hori Fighting Stick PS, this was released for 5,980 yen as well, so the same price as the ASCII product. So what does the PlayStation Perfect Catalogue have to say about this particular controller? Well, actually not a lot. 2 lines is all it's got, so I'll just read out what it says in Japanese and then I'll translate it into English. So it says, PlayStation 最初期に発売されたスティック、他機種でも同型のものが発売された。So what that means is that this was launched at the same time as the PlayStation, or very early on, and that this controller was also available for other systems in the same kind of form factor, which is absolutely the case because Hori made very similar controllers for the PC Engine, Super Famicom, the Neo Geo, and also, as mentioned, the Sega Saturn. So that's pretty much all it has to say about it. So this is PlayStation Tsushin. It's a special edition of Famicom Tsushin that was released when the PlayStation was first launched here in Japan. So you might be able to see 1994, December 9th there. So this was released at the time the PlayStation was launched, but more on this particular magazine in a future video. But it's a really good look back at some of the coverage about the PlayStation at the time that the PlayStation was launched. Fabulous advert from Sony here. Super Nintendo game wa koko ni atsumaru. So all of the games are gathering here is what that means. And you can see the original launch price there for the PlayStation, 39,800 yen. Yeah, the taxes on top of that as well. So, but yeah, wonderful magazine. But let's not dwell on that too much because I'm going to talk about this in a future episode. But on this particular page here, we've got the news section. It's got all sorts of information about the PlayStation launch, as well as some of the accessories. So, what does this magazine have to say about the Fighting Stick PS? Well, a little bit more actually. So I'll read it out in Japanese, and then I'll add some subtitles, as well as also explain what it means in English afterwards. So it says, Fighting Stick PS ゲームセンターと同じボタンとスティック使用しているホリ電子のジョイスティックだ。ボタンごとに秒間24発の発射機能を設定できるぞ。あくまでもゲームセンターの操作感覚でゲームをプレイしたいという人におすすめのコントローラーだ。So, okay, so to translate that, it essentially means that this is a controller that uses the same buttons and joystick as you will find in an arcade, a game center. From Hori, the controller also has auto fire, basically allowing for 24 shots per second, which I didn't mention actually, so this also has rapid fire on it, and also this joystick also has very much the feeling of a arcade cabinet or a game center. So yeah, basically it says that this is recommended for those people who want to get the real feeling of an arcade style controller on the system. So yeah, pretty high praise really. So, and I would agree with that. I would say that this really holds up. I'm sure there are some people who are even more in tune with this stuff than I am, that will say like, oh no, actually, if you had these buttons and this joystick in it, like a Sumitsu Nandra and Andra, it would be awesome. I don't know. Or if you put Sanwa buttons or something like that on it, maybe it'll make it even better, which I know you can mod this controller. But for me, I'm happy to leave it as it is because I really love playing games in this. So I think for a little over 1,500 yen, which is what I paid for it, this was an amazing bargain. Anyway, that's it for this particular one. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd love to read your comments below, and also tell me about what you use to play your games, whether it's for the PlayStation, a Saturn, or a more modern system. And for those of you that are using a joystick style controller, let me know what you're using these days. I'd be particularly interested actually to hear what you have to say about Switch arcade controllers. Are there any that you'd recommend? Because I do play quite a few one-on-one fighters on my Switch as well as some beat-em-ups. So I'll be interested to see what your thoughts are on that. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll catch you in another one of these. Take care. Bye-bye.